Turner drives one to center, chasing Nimmo back to the warning track, right at the fence. He made the catch! Oh, whoa! The catch of the year for Brandon Nimmo! He took a home run away from Justin Turner! Wow.
Episode 52. Welcome to the Say Hello podcast. My name is Casey Lynn. I am joined by my co-host, former Major League Baseball player, pitcher Bill Pulsifer. I want to say a special thank you to Steve behind the scenes. Check his podcast out at Cold Popcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button on Say Hello Media and follow us wherever you get your podcast. Bill, baseball is underway. And before we get into our jam-packed episode, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm glad that we are finally up and running here. We had little technical difficulties trying to get going today. But here we are. We're back. And baseball season is upon us, thank goodness, because I didn't want to talk about spring training anymore. Nothing's more boring than spring training.
Yeah, spring training, 6 weeks in the rearview mirror. Baseball, opening day, all has happened. Quick rundown of today's episode for everybody listening, real quick. We'll do a recap of the first 6 games or so, basically the opening road trip. We're going to talk about Pete Alonso and how locked in he looks. Good sign. How good the bullpen looks so far. Little talk on Baty and Vientos. Talk a little bit about Kodai Senga. And, of course, Sean Manaea had a little bit of a setback, and I'd be remiss, Bill, if we didn't talk about the hot topic right now, the torpedo bats. We'll talk about that. And, of course, we have the mailbag and quick pitches. So, before we get into all that, as everybody knows, 52, episode number 52, we got to go through the numbers that former Mets or current Mets have worn with that number 52. Bill, I know you've checked this out. I have. There's a couple players there, not many as we're used to, but, some names.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously the big ones out there that everybody remembers most recently with Cespedes being out there. But I'll let you, because I know you've got some information on the other ones, but I got a little link to one of the guys that you're probably going to mention.
I don't know. I didn't do many, but bring them up if you need to. We'll start with Tony Clark.
Well, that was easy.
Yep, there you go. He wore number 52 in 2003. He only played for the Mets for 1 year. It was 125 games. He had 232, 16 home runs, and 43 RBIs at first base. He had a good career, mostly with the Tigers. 15 years. He hit 251 home runs. So that's
played with the Yankees as well. He was a Yankee as well.
Yeah, he played for the 04 Yankees that famously, blew that ALCS 3-0 lead to the Red Sox. And Tony Clark right now is a big figure in baseball. Since 2013, he's the director of MLBPA, Association, and that's a big job. So he's a big figure. And, Tony Clark, 2003.
Yeah, that was the one that I have a tie to. I remember I came up through the minor leagues playing against Tony, and imposing figure, 6'7", 6'8", was a basketball player too, hit from both sides. I want to say it was in Trenton, the Trenton Thunder, which was at the time the Tigers AA. He hit a ball off of me that went over the batter's eye in spring training, and it might still be flying.
Wow.
But we had some good battles through the minor leagues, and Tony's a good dude and obviously has a big job when it comes to making sure that the players continue to get paid the beautiful salaries that they get paid nowadays.
Yeah, very, very big job. And you said it. Tony Clark is a huge dude. 6'7", right? 6'8".
Yeah, big dude, man.
Yeah, posing in the batter's box, I would think, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Although I tell you what, I always kind of like throwing to the bigger guys and the smaller guys. The bigger guys, they tend to swing bigger and have bigger strike zones. So little guys can be a little pesky sometimes.
Can't really name a taller player in the batter's box that comes to mind right now.
No, I mean, obviously Judge, and then I guess Richie Sexton was up there a little bit too. That was a big, tall fellow too.
Not near that tall, but he was one of them.
Yep.
Moving on, you mentioned him, number 52, Yoenis Cespedes. we all know the name. I'm sure everyone listening or watching has seen him play. Uh, came over in the big trade for Michael Fulmer from the Tigers 2015 at the deadline. Fulmer actually won the Rookie of the Year the next year, but he's flamed out ever since. And Cespedes obviously was the catalyst to get the Mets to the World Series in 2015. Bill, it's crazy. We all remember the streak that he went on. And it was just 57 games, basically the second half of 2015. 942 OPS. He had 17 home runs in 57 games, 44 RBIs, clutch as hell. And he brought us or the Mets to the World Series.
Yeah, but what an impressive run he had. It seemed like he almost made a run for MVP candidate in the brief time that he was when he came over after the trade. And it was like every night, every night he was doing something. I remember if I wasn't able to watch the games, being at work, working overnight and trying to listen, and then hearing Cespedes hit another home run or did something, something to really push that team into the far run that they had. And obviously just coming up short of the World Series, but it was a heck of a spark plug he was.
Yeah, that's the World Series. The postseason, we all know, was taken over by Daniel Murphy, and that run that Murphy had. Cespedes played 5 years for the Mets to 2020. Had a very respectable 8.83 OPS. All-Star in 2016. Had a great arm. Clutch as hell in 15 and 16. But injuries and wild boars got into the end of it.
And golf clubs.
And golf clubs every day. But we'll remember him for that 2015 run. It was
absolutely.
The last guy I have on this list is a guy who pitched for the Mets last year, but not for long. Jorge Lopez in the bullpen. He pitched well for the Mets, but we all remember him. He threw his glove into the stands and was quoted as saying, playing for the worst team in baseball, and the Mets cut him, and that was it.
Well, he said he was calling himself the worst teammate, is how he ended up trying to turn it.
Right.
Who knows what it was? Maybe lost in translation. But we can also look at that as that was the turning point kind of the season, because that was the low mark, and that was kind of when things took a turn in the right direction for the ball club. Unfortunate for him, but fortunate for the rest of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe it was when they were around 11 under.
I think that was it. That was the day that they went to the 11 under mark.
Yeah, everything changed after that. So
sure did. They got Iglesias, and Lindor decided to start playing.
Yeah, well, it was May, so of course. But not a big list, but some good names on there.
Yep.
All right, we got to talk about the early season of the Mets, Bill.
Yeah.
They started off their first road trip, 6 games, Houston and Miami, 3-3, and it was a tale of 2 series, in my opinion. I'm going to get your thoughts real quick.
Yeah.
But in the Houston series, they lost 2 out of 3. They only scored 5 runs.
Yeah.
Their bats were quiet. Soto hit a home run. We saw Clay Holmes make his starter debut for the Mets, where he only went 4 2/3 on opening day, and they lost by a score of 3-1 on opening day. Framber Valdez was absolutely awesome for the Astros, but 4 walks he gave up, too many base runners. He threw 89 pitches, and the Mets lost opening day. I don't know if you saw this. It was the second time in Mets history that they lost back-to-back opening days.
Because they've always been an opening day team. It's always been the Mets thing.
And the first time, Bill, 99 and 2000, which is crazy because we all know those years.
Right. Yeah. So, how well they ended up going. So maybe it's a sign.
But I'm not we got to see the rotation. Manaea is out. We'll talk about him having a setback. But basically, we saw Holmes, McGill, Griffin Canning, Kodai Senga, and David Peterson. And to be honest with you, Bill, and you're a pitcher and you watch these guys closely, all 5 of them, they pitched well. Nobody gave up a crooked number, gave up 5 runs. Peterson was great. Holmes is still working it out. I wanted to get your thoughts on the rotation and just your thoughts in the first 6 games on the pitching side.
Yeah, well, I think Holmes probably came out. He had nowhere to go but down after spring training. and obviously he's going to have a little bit of a curve getting back into, no pun intended, getting back into this, being a starting pitcher. I expect him to be solid. I expect him to do well. I was a little surprised that his velocity was down a little bit, but I mean, I guess everybody kind of says that you're supposed to quote unquote throw harder when you're out of the bullpen, but I don't get it. I mean, I think everybody throws every pitch as much as hard as they can nowadays because it's more of a sprint than it is a marathon as a starting pitcher. Obviously, Canning was a pleasant surprise, after having such a rough year, but we've talked about it through the winter with the Mets believing in their pitching lab and what they can do. Obviously, his third time around was when they saw the slider about 8,000 times and they started to get to him a little bit. So I think that the slider use can't be as high as it was all year, as it was in his first start. Senga kind of looked like he worked his way into it a little bit. Obviously, much better than the guy we saw at the end of the year last year when he came back after hurting his calf. It was nice to see him be out there and pitching a little bit. Obviously, he only got 9 innings in spring training, which is insane to think that somebody's going to walk out to be a starting pitcher. But he was an error and a bad pitch away from having a really good outing. Obviously Lindor made an error to start the 5th, and then he gave up. He threw a bad pitch that led to 2 runs to make those 2 runs into 4 runs, even though it was 2 unearned runs. You'd like to see him to be able to pick Lindor up a little bit for the error that he made. But first time through, I saw the same thing we saw last year too. I saw a lot of 4 2/3. So as we saw last year, that it's going to put a lot of pressure on the relief guys, and we can talk about the last game in Miami where we had Diaz pitching in the 8th and then having Taylor trying to close the game out. Obviously, that has a lot to do with the guys not being able to get past the 6th inning in the starting rotation. But hopefully that's something that will be coming shortly. But all in all, they pitched well. Just you got to go deeper. You got to go deeper. You can't ask for 12 and 13 and 14 outs every night from the bullpen.
Yeah. Nobody really went all that deep. Peterson, I believe, out of the first.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even mention he threw great. Obviously came up a little shy in the distance, but he looked good. So kind of came back as who he left last year.
Yeah, Peterson, 89 pitches, 6 innings, 2 runs.
That's the magic number.
Yeah, 9 Ks for David Peterson.
Yeah. The slider is something that they were talking about, where they feel like that's going to be the make or break pitch for him. And he did get quite a few swings and misses on it. And he got swings and misses on it out of the strike zone. So that means it's nasty. Guys are seeing it as a strike, and it's not.
Yeah, and also we got to touch on Tyler McGill, who pitched very well.
Yes, he did.
It was the second game of the year in Houston. 5 innings, only 1 earned run, 6 strikeouts. He pitched well. Bullpen took care of the rest. He looked good. He was throwing 98, looked composed, and got out of a couple of little sticky situations. But
he needs to change his nickname from the Big Drip, which I can't stand, to the Survivor, because he just finds a way to always get his way back in there, and then we'll get you feeling like, all right, this is going to be the guy, and let's see that if he can keep it going. He's obviously more mature and more experienced, so you hope that he uses that his experience and his ups and downs that he's had to finally maybe grab the bull by the horns a little bit.
Yeah. In Miami, real quick, they won the first game in Miami on Monday. The Bats came alive after scoring only 5 runs. In Houston, they scored 10 runs in the opener in Miami. 4 home runs they hit, 1 by Marte, grand slam by Pete Alonso, Luis Torrens, who's been a godsend from the injury to Alvey, and Nimmo hit a home run as well. So the offense came alive. And then they dropped the next game, which, that was Sandy Alcantara pitching. Stuff happens. He's a great pitcher. And the last game before the home opener was, I believe, on Wednesday. And that was a back and forth game, and that was also Clay Holmes going again. And once again, Bill, he went 4 2/3. It was a back and forth game. Pete Alonso hit a 3-run home run in the 8th inning, I believe, and they got it done in the 11th inning. And so they went 3-3 on the road trip. We saw a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it was nice to see Lindor break out a little bit and get the hit there prior to Pete coming up really clutch and hitting the 3-2 home run, the grand slam. And that was it's crazy to say a must-win game because there's so many games to play, but coming home for that first, game at home at 2-4 as opposed to 3-3, It kind of
Yeah.
puts a different taste in the mouth. And yeah, obviously, I hate to say must-win game, but they kind of needed that win, and it was nice to see them get it.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit about Pete Alonso. I want to dive a little bit deeper uh, and get your thoughts. I see a guy who's completely locked in. I saw it in spring training. Yeah, small sample size in 6 games for the road trip, but he's got a grand slam, a 3-run homer. But the big thing, Bill, and we've talked about this off air, is he's not chasing like he did last year, and he's hitting the ball to right field, which is vintage Pete Alonso. He looks locked in, and hopefully, obviously, it continues. I don't know if Soto has anything to do with it batting in front of him, but Pete Alonso looks like 2019, rookie of the year, 53 home runs, Pete Alonso.
Well, I tell you, the most impressive thing is the pitches that he's taken. It seems like every borderline pitch that he takes is a ball, and it's being called a ball. And we know from how things went with him last year, it seemed like he was chasing all those pitches that were borderline balls, borderline strikes, or were balls that he decided, he needed to go after. So I thought the first series, his swing didn't look as locked in as it looked in the second series. And the eye itself, the taking of the pitches, the close pitches was still right there. It looked like he really got better with each at bat, with the swing as well as not chasing anything. He hasn't chased them. I was thinking about it. I think I've seen him chase one or two, what I would say, quote unquote, poor pitches, which one of them was a slider down out of the strike zone out of Alcantara's hand, which you could be forgiven for swinging at a nasty slider coming from him. But looks like a different ball player, looks so much more relaxed at this point in time. You obviously hope for him to continue and have a big year and be the catalyst that we know he can be, because obviously in that last game, it would look for a while that he was one of the only guys that actually showed up to play that day, and he rallied the troops, and he was Pete, big meat Pete, man. He did his thing.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this on Wednesday. It was a 3-2 pitch, ball 4, and he didn't want to leave the batter's box. He was so locked in that the umpire was like, "Take your base." Like he moved. Like it was almost like it was like, "No, I still want to hit."
I still want to hit. Yeah, I saw that, and I thought the same thing. He's definitely locked in, man. He looks like a different guy. Who knows what guys do in the off season, but whatever Pete did, good for him, man. Good for him, and it's good to see him and not look the pensive look that he had on his face a lot of the times last year, the exasperated look, and you just hope that continues, because obviously although he's not the quote unquote leader anymore, when Pete's going good, that's when the Mets are usually going good as well.
Yeah, so that's a good sign. A good sign, Bill, is the bullpen. They had, Nunez didn't make the team. He's still coming back from his surgery last year, but a lot of guys have stepped up and have pitched lights out for a good, I believe, until the 4th game. I forget. The bullpen didn't allow a run, and until Danny Young did. But the Max Kranichs, the Brazabons, the Reed Garretts, even Diaz in his first game was lights out. Budo looked great. I mean,
nice bounce back. Very nice bounce back for Budo.
Yeah, but all in all, Stanek, that 100-mile-an-hour fastball. But
Kranick looks great. Kranick looks outstanding. He hasn't pitched in the big leagues in 3 years. It looks like he's been one of the top 7th, 8th inning guys for a while. He looks great.
Kranick went 3 innings and he only threw 22 pitches.
Yeah, he's been lights out. Every pitch has been sharp. He's got that little short, deceiving arm action, arm angle. Came in an incredible situation his first outing with the bases loaded. I know Mendoza had said he was trying to find a soft landing spot for him, and I would say bases loaded, and Alvarez up at the plate from Houston that's one of the harder spots you're ever going to get yourself in, and he handled it with aplomb. He looks like he belongs. The only thing, obviously, is you got to worry about these guys being overused. The good thing is they've had these early off days to try to let them bounce back.
Yeah, so Kranick looks like he's here to stay. They're going to get Nunez back, which, when healthy, he's a great pitcher. So the bullpen, early sample size, not big, but I like what I've seen, and obviously
it's better than the other way around, right? Them struggling. So obviously last year at the certain points of the season, the bullpen was a contention spot with the club, But again, like we said numerous times, you put that a little bit on the starters not holding their own early on. So you hope that the starters, as the next 2 to 3 starts, start to expand out a little bit, and you can let guys pitch in the spots that they belong in out of the bullpen, and kind of create their roles, create their niche, and then just go from there.
Yeah. We got to talk about the flip side. Some, not me. It's a little early to worry about things, but what I've seen, and I want to get your thoughts, of course. Two guys, Vientos, Mark
Yeah.
Vientos, Brett Baty.
Yeah.
They're playing today, and they're not off to good starts. It's too early to, say, oh my God, but it looks like they're pressing. Vientos hit some balls hard, but it looks like mentally, he's had some errors. He didn't run out of the box. Baty's not hitting, and obviously we all know that Baty had a hell of a spring, and you wanted him to continue it. Small sample size, give him more rope. I mean, I'm not worried about Vientos, but there is that sophomore slump that after such a great year that he had last year, as of right now, he's batting like 100, if not lower.
Yeah, maybe below that. Look, man, Vientos is a flashy guy. These are the guys that can go one way or the other. If you're going to be the flashy guy, as somebody that was a flashy guy, you better be able to produce. And he kind of puts a little bit of pressure on himself to go out there. And obviously the sophomore jinx, even though he's not a sophomore anymore, the guy's been up and down for many years now, really, when you think about it. He's gotta pick it up. He looks like he's guessing at the plate right now. Looks like he's saying, this is the pitch I believe that's coming, and I'm going to swing. He swung at some bad pitches. Obviously, there's added pressure now because you have done it, that they're going to expect you to do it. Baty, I like Acuna. I think we got to give him a chance to play. I don't think Baty's a second baseman. I think Baty has had every opportunity to be a New York Met, and I think that Baty could probably be a successful baseball player. I'm just not sure that it's going to be in Flushing.
Yeah.
You hope for the best, but I mean, second baseman, other than Robinson Cano, I can't name a big lumbering second baseman. Maybe Ryan Sandberg was a big guy, but, Baty's a big dude, man. He's a big guy.
He really is. And
you got to hit. You got to hit. You got to hit.
Yeah. Baty's got a little tag on him where he hits minor league pitching. He does well in spring training, and then he comes up to the big leagues, and I know that's weighing on him. It's got to be a little bit. Of course.
Got to be mental a little bit, too. I mean, obviously, he's got every physical tool out there. Some guys are, a little more mentally tough than others, I guess. I mean, I could be guilty of that myself. You hope for the best for him, but maybe there's a way that he can either turn it on, or he can go somewhere else and maybe get the Mets some chips, and he can go somewhere and turn it on. But who knows? I mean, you hope for the best, but obviously they're both pressing a little bit right now. Yeah. And Vientos, you just hope that he stays hungry and doesn't feel it. He isn't a 5 to 10 year established guy in the big leagues, because those guys that do stick around and they become superstars after 5 or 10 years, they bust their ass, and they pay attention to the details. He made a crazy play the other day on a ball that he thought was foul, that he decided to field anyway, that was fair. Just, if you thought it was foul and you weren't sure, you might just let it go by. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's got a lot of stuff running through his head right now.
Yeah, I mean, isn't the old adage, just don't think out there, just react. Kind of.
If it was only that easy, right?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the pitching side of a couple things. I mentioned earlier we were going to talk a little bit about Senga, and we did talk about Senga. His first start, I'm happy that he came out healthy. That was the biggest thing for me. His first inning, it was not good against the Marlins. He gave up 2 runs. But after that, besides a couple errors by Francisco Lindor that, cost the Mets basically the game, Senga was lights out. He had his ghost forkball was amazing. It just disappeared like it did in 2023. He had 8 strikeouts. He went 5 innings, 70-something pitches, but healthy. And after that first inning, he really looked like Senga of 2023. So I was pretty pleased with his outing.
Yeah, no, definitely pleased with the outing. I would say if there's any bit of concern, I would say early in the game would have been fastball command. He really struggled getting the fastball over, and it did seem like his velocity was down a little bit. I saw some 92s and 93s, but then he was able to crank it up into the 96 range.
Right.
I was a little concerned when they said that in spring training, even though he only threw 9 innings, he did throw on the backfields quite a bit. They said he wasn't using the split finger or the fork ball quite as much, but he used it quite a bit in that game. When I mentioned the fastball command, what I think is going to be important with that is you're not going to have guys swinging at as many of those fork balls in the dirt every single game. I think to the Marlins, they've got a young club, young hitters. They were chasing some pitches that maybe as we move on, that some of the more veteran guys will know to lay off of them a little bit better. I thought the velocity was down a little bit on that pitch as well. But if they're swinging and missing at it, why would you stop throwing it?
Yeah.
So I'd like to see a little better fastball command early on next time out, and not maybe having to rely so much on the fork ball right away, because obviously the more you throw fork balls, if there is anything going on with his arm, which we've questioned in the past, that's obviously a pitch that could exacerbate some elbow situations. But nice to see him bounce back after what happened, come playoff time last year when he was thrown directly back into the fire, and he struggled with command and struggled with confidence.
Yeah. I'm pleased with his thing. And he actually, I believe, threw 14 ghost fork balls, and he had 8 swings and misses. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So something
You
to
can
build.
keep calling it the ghost fork ball all you want. I will not do that.
Fork ball?
It's a fork ball to me.
Fork ball it is.
In movies, they name their pitches.
There you go. Like
Yeah.
the Terminator, the Eliminator.
Yeah.
Too.
The see you later.
Yeah, right. Homage to.
I'm going to stick with fork ball.
All right.
But it's a good pitch, nonetheless, whatever you want to call it.
It sure worked.
Yes.
Last thing on the rotation, he hasn't pitched yet, but he was signed for big money. Sean Manaea obviously hasn't thrown a pitch for the Mets in spring training. He had that oblique injury. He had a setback. He was ramping up again, and he experienced discomfort while ramping up. MRI showed inflammation in the oblique. They gave him a PRP injection, and now he's shut down for 2 more weeks. If lucky, we're probably not going to see him until after Memorial Day. It's not the news you wanted to hear on who was supposed to be the ace of this team.
Well, I mean, we've talked about this. I think if you're going to emulate pitchers throughout the game, emulating Stickman and Chris Sale, that might be the wrong guy to go after. Obviously, it turned Sean's season around last year. But I've said this numerous times to you in the pod and off the pod that I think that, Sean's a big dude trying to do all that torque, stepping from way left to turn back right. Not surprising. You hope that it's just a slight setback and he can get back on track. But I think he's picked what can be successful route to also make it very difficult on an aging body as a guy that gets into his 30s.
Yeah, and it makes Kodai Senga even that more important,
And McGill, and it's everybody. Blackburn, what's he going to do? So it's
right.
It's and Montas went, but obviously there was a lot of expectations for Manaea. He had a great year. I've said this before. You can put him kind of in the same category as Vientos. Are you going to come back and be able to do it again the following year? So obviously he's being hampered right now and not getting the opportunity to do it due to health. You hope that it's not the change of mechanics and a little bit older. That's something that it's going to have him maybe change things back a little bit. But I mean, you watch him warm up in the bullpen when he's standing on one mound and he's throwing the ball all the way across to the other mound. Just think of, and it's his right oblique. Hello.
Right.
It's not his left one. It's the right one that he's turning to. So it all kind of makes sense,
Well, hopefully no more setbacks for Sean Manaea because the Mets really cannot stand that. We got to talk about this, Bill. It's the talk of the first week of Major League Baseball. The Torpedo bats.
Yeah.
The only player on the Mets that's using is Francisco Lindor, but we saw what the Yankees did against the Brewers. And they set records. We've now heard about other players using it across Major League Baseball. Not everybody, but basically it's legal. And, basically they put the barrel and more mass of wood, I guess is the best way to explain it, on the barrel. Yeah. So it's up to the player, obviously, when they design it with all the, whatever goes into it. I wanted to get your thoughts on it because, it's an innovation that might take over Major League Baseball. It's here to stay.
Well, I guess obviously with the analytics and the analyzing of batted balls, um, the guys behind the scenes have come to realize that the balls are getting batted more down towards the trademark as opposed towards the end of the bat. So in the past, the thinking has always been trying to have that barrel down towards the end of the bat. That if you do hit it towards the end of the bat, you're still able to put some solid wood on it. But I guess through investigation, they've come to find out that more balls are being hit towards the where it used to be where the trademark. We used to, as pitchers, we used to try to hit them on the trademark because you knew that the bat was probably going to break at that point in time. So my outlook on it is, look, if it's not illegal, which it's not, I guess it's something that the innovation with all of the spin rates and the spin angles and all that the pitchers have used over the last 5 or so years, that this is now, like you said, an innovation for the hitters. And I think it might end up turning and putting into play the two-seam sinking fastball again a little bit more, or in the changeup, where you're trying to get guys to hit the ball closer towards the end of the bat, because obviously they're showing that if you're going to try to jam us, we now have a weapon that we can use on balls that you usually wouldn't be able to hit, with any force, and they're being able to hit the ball with some force and hit the ball out of the ballpark.
Yeah, the biggest thing I've seen is Yankee shortstop Anthony Volpe.
Yeah.
12 home runs last year. He's got the torpedo bat. He's got 4 home runs already.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with every player, but I guess if they don't like it, they could go back to their original bat,
I mean, I'm sure it's got to feel different, just the weight distribution. Your whole life, you've kind of, even though there's obviously variations of handle and barrel and all that, but they're all close. They're all within reason. Obviously, this is completely different. So it's got to, there's got to be a learning curve for guys. I don't expect the league, if guys that have been not using it at all, jumping in and taking 1 or 2 batting practice sessions and saying, I feel comfortable to go face whoever, to go face Fromber. I feel comfortable to do it. I don't expect that to happen. I think that guys are definitely going to get those bats in their hands and start taking batting practice with them. I mean, there's also been the rumor that possibly Stanton and his elbow problems have been caused to swing in this different bat. So who's to really say? But look, man, I guess that, baseball has had its changes over the last few years. Pitching, has had its changes on the analytics and how you look at going about pitching. So I guess it was only about time that the hitters kind of had something go in their direction a little bit when it comes to that. It's just amazing that after all these years that nobody ever really came up with it before, so yeah. It's kind of crazy. I know there's a lot of pitchers that are up in arms about it, but I mean, I guess that's now it's our turn again to make the move,
Yeah. It's legal. So pitchers really, can't really say all that much, and
learn how to throw better changeups and better sinkers and get them off the end of the bat again.
The one, before we get into the mailbag, the one quote I like was actually from Pete Alonso, and he doesn't use it. And he said, paraphrasing here, it's the Indian and not the arrow. So he doesn't really believe. He said he's going to try it. He'll get a shipment, see how it works at batting practice. But a lot of people can make that case. Pete's got power, so he could say that.
Well, I mean, look, obviously, Judge said he's not changing anything, and why would he?
Right.
And we go with Archer nowadays.
Yeah.
Archer, not the,
Yeah.
Some people might get offended.
Yeah. No, they asked Judge, to your point, and he said, I think my numbers speak.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's had some of the best off. Why would he change anything? But you know what? If you look at it, you look at the guys that are using it. And I look at Cody Bellinger was one of the guys that originally last year started to be introduced to it, in Volpe. They're both guys that stand directly on top of home plate. So in my eyes, you look at Judge stays away from home plate. You know who else isn't going to use it? Altuve's not going to use that bat. So the guys that are using it are guys that want to stand right on top of home plate and then have pitchers try to jam them and still be able to, where we used to say, I got in your kitchen. Getting in your kitchen nowadays could end up being a problem. So I think that the guys that do stand on the plate, they might become better hitters out of it. I don't think everybody's going to. I mean, look at Jazz had a terrible game the other day, struck out 3 or 4 times using the exact same bat. So it's still going to be hard to hit, but obviously there's going to be some quote unquote mishits that aren't mishits anymore.
It will be definitely something to keep our eyes on. All Major League Baseball is. So definitely have to touch on that. Already, Bill, It's mailbag time, baby.
Yeah, man. It's been a while.
Yeah,
Mailbag.
we got a couple questions, so let's get right into it. Let's start with Theo at SwaggyT120. He's got a question for both of us. He goes, Bill, which Major League Baseball stadium had the best food for players?
That's a toss up. I mean, obviously, New York has got tremendous food. So at Shea, we always had awesome food. You got Frankie and Johnny the Pine restaurant coming in every homestand. The food was always great. They did a great job there. Chicago has tremendous food too. Wrigley Field. It was a terrible clubhouse. I'm sure it's a much better clubhouse now than it was when I was playing there as a traveling ball player. But Wrigley Field has great food. Chicago's a great food town. But Shea was tough to beat, man. As a home player, Shea was. You knew you were getting good grub.
I like that answer. Very good. He has a question for me. It's food related. Casey, best ballpark food that you've ever had? I'm not a foodie at all, especially when it comes to baseball. So if I'm at a game, I'm your standard. Just give me a hot dog or a sausage, and
Keep
I'm
it
good.
simple. I tell you
Yeah,
what, City Field does a hell of a job, man.
yeah. They're rated number one, I believe, for the
Yeah,
third.
and I went quite a few times last year. Went seven times last year. I know we're recording now. I will be in attendance for opening day, and I expect for me and my good friend Joel Sunshine to eat way more than we should.
Yeah, it's costly too, but it's from what I hear, they make really good food.
Yeah, they do. They do a good job. They do a real good job.
Let's thank you for the question, Theo. Let's move to JK at NYMGI. He has a question for you, Bill. We talked about this with Baty, but his question is: Brett Baty seems to be approaching that point where it's really time for maybe a change of scenery. In your career, what player or teammate do you remember who really needed a change of scene to be successful?
Yeah, well, I thought about this, and I think I have two pretty good answers. One was an original Met, and the other one became a Met and then had to leave the Mets before he became a borderline Hall of Famer, and quite possibly should be in the Hall of Fame if he got along with the media. But I would say Isringhausen first because he went off to save over 300 games and could
Right.
questionably be a borderline Hall of Famer. That is a Cardinals Hall of Famer with his 300 plus saves. But Jeff Kent,
Yeah.
Jeff Kent went on to probably should be a Hall of Famer. Obviously, didn't have a good relationship with the guys that vote guys in. But Jeff was, not going to be. He was borderline, almost not a major leaguer when the Mets ended up getting rid of him. And then Jeff went on to leaving Flushing and turning out to be one of the better second basemen of his era.
Yeah, Jeff Kent has the most home runs ever at second base.
Which
So
hard to believe you're not in the Hall of Fame if you do that.
it's crazy.
When they
It
say
really,
most ever, and it's been 160 years,
yeah, yeah.
it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Very good question. Thank you, JK. Last question. Not really a question, or I don't know, maybe he's fooling around, but your buddy, former Met pitcher Glendon Rush, he wrote in actually, and it was quick. Will Bill take BP with the torpedo bat?
Well, Glendon and I are good buddies, and we are Mets fantasy camp coaches together, and we are on a thread with a few other former left-handed major league pitchers, text thread. So this has been quite a hot topic. So he's obviously busting chops a little bit. But I will say this: when I go to my next fantasy camp, where I am going to Syracuse, and I also am going to be doing the first one at Citi Field in September, which is going to be awesome.
Also,
I'm going to Syracuse in June. If there's a torpedo bat around, I would be remiss if I didn't pick up the bat and at least swing it just to see what it feels like. So will I take an official BP session? Maybe not, but maybe as well. I don't know. I'd like to see what it's all about. At least check it out.
time will tell. You let us know when you do.
I will.
All right. Thanks for the questions, everybody. Quick pitches time. For people who don't know, it doesn't have to be baseball related. Bill does not know the questions coming. Here we go. Ready, Bill?
Yes, sir.
Question 1. What is your favorite midnight snack?
Man, favorite midnight snack. It's really kind of simple, honestly. 2 pieces of cheese, one on each side of a breaded bread, 1 to 2 pieces of ham, grilled cheese sandwich.
Okay. So
So
it's a
it's
grilled.
one piece of cheese on one piece of bread, one piece of cheese on the other piece of bread. So there's obviously a little overlap of bread on either side. So you have to put one piece of bread to one piece of cheese to one side of the bread, and the other piece of cheese to the other side of the bread. And then you put your 1 to 2 pieces, not too much,
That sounds delicious.
grilled cheese sandwich.
There you go. So a grilled cheese sandwich, but you have your way of doing it.
That's how I do it every single time. I don't go for 3 pieces of cheese because that's too much. So you do
Right.
have a little bit of overlap of bread that doesn't have cheese, but there's actually cheese on one of the sides to each of them. So
I like it.
every once in a while, maybe just a little bit of mustard on there, but you don't need it.
I might have a grilled cheese sandwich later.
Dude, I'm telling you, 1 piece of boar's head ham right in there, not too thick, because you don't want your ham not to be warmed all the way through. You want that ham to be warmed all the way through. So 1 to 2 thin slices of boar's head ham as I pub.
I love it. Question 2. What is something valuable that you learned throughout your career? Is there something that sticks out through your years?
Never take anything for granted. Never take anything for granted. Nothing is guaranteed. You're always going to have to work. Life is hard. Just don't take anything for granted, man. Never think that you have it. And I'll use Vientos as kind of a little bit example of somebody he's going to have to keep that in mind, because it came, I'm not going to say it came easily for him last year because nothing's easy, but he really took off, and you don't want him to be more worried about doing the quote unquote dong flop out at second base when he hits double, as opposed to just keep your head down and keep working, man.
Yeah, that might have to stop now. That little
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, 085 is a good time to stop the dong flopping.
Yeah. Words of wisdom by Bill Pulsifer right there. Question 3. I'm interested. What does a perfect day look like for Bill Pulsifer?
Slightly cloudy, 70 degrees to 75 tops, maybe a light little breeze at the ball field on the golf course. Nice and easy. I don't like it too hot. Don't like it too cold.
So like saying,
I don't want a perfectly blue sky. Just a little bit of slightly cloudy in there. Just partially. I don't know which one's the least amount. If it's partially cloudy or slightly cloudy, I don't know. But 70 to 75 degrees tops.
like
Light humidity, not 85% humidity.
absolutely humidity.
About 65% humidity.
That's
Not dead calm. Little breeze.
basically San Diego. I feel like that's every day.
The whale's vagina. Yeah, San Diego is perfect.
There you go. That's an Anchorman.
Stay classy.
Will Ferrell. So
Yes.
that's going to wrap up Quick Pitches and also wrap up episode 52. Baseball is back. We are excited. I want to thank Steve behind the scenes. And Bill, we are underway. We got 150 plus more games to go. Mets have expectations. We'll see how it plays out. We know, injuries happen, slumps happen. Hopefully, it's not a roller coaster year like last year. But
Don't hold your breath.
yeah, but baseball's back, and that's the most important thing because we missed it.
Yeah, man. I'm so happy that you get to sit down and turn the TV on in the evening or the radio if you're driving around, and it's the best time of the year. We know baseball season is the best. If we can have football's all fine and dandy and basketball, whatever, but we all know that baseball is where it's at, and it's so good that it's back, and takes so long for it to come back, but it's here. We got a long season ahead of us, and I'm looking forward to it.
As I am too. So, for Bill Pulsifer and Steve, my name is Casey Lynn, saying so long from the Say Hello podcast.
Shortest one yet. 43.50.